Welcome to episode 91 of No Hacks Show, a weekly podcast in which we talk to smart people about the many ways you can optimize your website. And we're doubling up on smartness this week because we have two guests, Lorenzo Carreri and Rishi Rawat. Welcome to the podcast, the two faces and voices behind the How Shoppers Think YouTube channel.
Hi,
Thank you.
what's going on? Thank you for inviting us.
So I wanted to talk to you both together for a very long time. The channel is obviously incredible. To some of you who listen to our podcast and haven't checked the YouTube channel, I believe there may be one or two people who haven't heard of you. The link will be in the description. It's a very, very good channel to follow if you are into optimization, understanding how people buy and why they do the smart and stupid things they do online. Let's just put it that way. So today we're talking about, as I'm enabling airplane mode on my phone, we're talking about distractions and distractions in e-commerce. And you guys are all about e-commerce, obviously. Rishi, you are the product page guy. I mean, obviously, so we're going to focus on the product page. Before we get into things like attention tags, all that, I want to ask you, how come Amazon is getting away with such horrible pages full of distractions?
My take is that it would be extremely difficult for them to figure out how to optimize pages at the category level because they have so many, right? Like, I actually went down the rabbit hole of, I spent a weekend a year ago, Rishi knows this, but I spent the weekend literally analyzing different pages on Amazon, and I have like a mirror board with all the biggest discoveries and so on. And I realized that there's so many different type of pages at the product page and a category page level on Amazon that, I would say maybe like one would be, it would be a big headache, for anybody in experimentation team at Amazon to figure out how to improve it. But to me, it's like, I know the teams on Amazon know what the hell they're doing. So, maybe those distractions don't seem to be distractions for people that buy there, because maybe like even, I don't know, buying on Amazon is very different than buying in any other e-commerce, even from like a trust standpoint, right? So maybe they can get away with it.
I think that's exactly right. So, the idea of attention tags really comes into play, or distractions, comes into play. Think about it this way, if you have an intimate relationship with someone and you're sitting and having dinner with them versus you have this forced sales call that you have to sit on for lunch with someone, which one will be more distracted? And obviously the second scenario. So I think what happens with Amazon is that the trust factor, the biggest hurdle for any e-commerce business is trust. Amazon has built such a moat with trust that I'm a very sticky visitor on their website. So distractions play less of a role, so they can get away with like more like for example, when I'm buying on Amazon, they're constantly like adding more stuff and trying to increase the bundle size and stuff like that. They can afford to do that because I'm going to pay attention to what they say. Now, of course, if Amazon stops delivering and I stop paying attention to it, suddenly these things will turn around and really hurt them. But the difference between Amazon and a Google search that leads to an ad click to a product page is entirely different. On that situation, when I'm in a speed dating mode, any obstruction is a distraction for me. And so it matters more, whereas Amazon has built equity and we know what it stands for. And I've transacted with them 100 times and never been disappointed. I mean, that all of that equity makes me less sensitive to distractions. They're still there, but they're less of deal breakers.
Experience, right? It's a completely different mindset getting to that page. You had a great video. I'll just throw this out there with comparing product images on Amazon versus that same product. Is it called Tile? The small tracking devices.
Yeah.
Even the images are more distracting. They explain a lot more, but they have so much text. You have to read the images in addition to all the text in the page. So I would say obviously it works because Jeff Bezos is a rich guy. Otherwise, maybe he wouldn't be. But it's just very interesting. Isn't that what Booking was doing years ago when they deliberately made it look bad, like it's broken UI, so it looks cheaper? So you think you're not paying a premium. You think you're buying something that's actually not as expensive as it is. I believe years ago I read that somewhere. So yeah, this is very. I mean, Amazon, and it's a category. Like it's a beast on its own. Like you can't basically, if you're trying to sell something, you cannot copy them. that would be the biggest mistake you can make.
Yeah, the other thing I'm thinking about is that a lot of people use Amazon as a search engine for buying stuff, right? So kind of like to Rishi's point, the intent of somebody that is on Amazon versus the intent of somebody that is on a direct-to-consumer brand who can come from like an article, an SEO article that is very like informational driven, or from a Facebook ad where the guys that at the DMV watching, a bunch of videos or photos of people is completely different. So it's kind of like, Rishi always talks about the offline experience, of going into a store and being like stopped and blocked by different people. If you walk into the store, there's a big intent there, right? So even if people stop you and block you, you still are interested to go buy that product.
Right. I mean, selling bread is easier in a supermarket than at a bus station, I would assume. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. People are there with money to spend on Amazon if they're using it as a search engine. So that is a great point. Let's get to the main topic, and that is attention tax. You had a few good definitions on your channel. The way I see it, it is the conversions you lose because of the unnecessary distractions, like as simple as that. How would you define it? Like, do you have any further explanation to what it is?
Rishi invented the term, so
so I think so part of it is the reason why we started thinking about in terms of this idea of attention tax is because we were running into this problem with clients where we have this concept, it seems, of infinite attention. We assume that the user that comes to our page, we can talk to them about every aspect of our product. And what that does is it takes the pressure away from having to prioritize. And so we came up with this term of attention tax to put pressure on clients and put pressure on ourselves to say that, yes, this product might have 57 features, but are all of them equally important? Do I prioritize some over the other? Because as long as the marketer or the client is convinced that the user has infinite or she has infinite time with the buyer, then they'll continue talking about those 57 features. And so this is a way to kind of give pushback on that idea and say, listen, we have to make some calls. We have to make some choices. Because even though, on a physical paper, see, the distinction is that in a magazine ad, I have physical limitations for how much I can fit on a page. So the idea of, prioritization is very obvious. On a product page or on a home page or whatever it is, you can have infinite scroll. You can have lots of things that make the page 50x longer. And there's this tendency to say that let's keep on stuffing stuff. And so that's where it really came from. Is this kind of understanding that the user is only going to be with us for a limited amount of time. The user is already distracted. That's the key thing, is that by the time they come to us, they are already like exhausted. So I have very little bandwidth left. And so when you start put the label of attention tax on everything, it changes your perspective, and you start saying, oh, wait a minute, this 5-minute video is a piece of content that once consumed is also taking away certain attention. So of course the video, previously we would have discussions about like, are you saying this video is not important? Well, of course it's important. All of these things are important. But what I'm saying is that when I have 20 units of attention with the buyer, and if you have these 17 elements that are taking away 17 units of attention, I'm only left with 3. And is that the call that you want to make? And I think when you frame it that way, the CEO will typically say, well, actually, no, I want more than 3 units. And that's how we prioritize. So that's kind of the genesis of the idea.
That's a very good to describe the attention units, and basically working with a client. You have 20, this is 5, this is 3, this is 4, like just mix and match and choose whatever you want.
Correct.
But then you're left with 3, like you said, and that's a problem. Lorenzo, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I want to amplify something that Rishi just said around forget about the distractions on the site. People are already being distracted, even if they're not specifically looking at the site. I think about every time I'm using my phone, which by the way, when I talk about buying online, most of the times I'm talking about the mobile experience, because in my having looked at a lot of Google Analytics account throughout the years, the amount of traffic that is mobile is destroying desktop big time, right? And obviously on mobile, the amount of distractions, again, outside the website is even higher, right? Think about how many messages do you receive, or how many notifications do you receive today versus 5 years ago, right? Did they go up or down? Of course they went up, right? So I think sometimes people forget when they optimize website or they think about the user experience and so on, they forget about the distractions that the user is, the context of distractions where the user sits. So not just about the website, but the context of where the person is. So it's something to always keep in mind.
Right. And like you just said, it's not just the notifications that are probably 50 times more compared to 5 years ago. I don't even know what the number is. It depends on your settings on the phone, obviously. It's the context. Like the phone is just a small thing, a small part of what you see out there. Like there's a TV, there's noise out the window. There's this, there's that. There's always something else happening. Computer, at least, like it's bigger part of the viewport, and you kind of focus on that, but not really. With phone, it's just completely different. In one of the videos, you said that average time on site for e-commerce is 2 minutes, 32
seconds.
Or something. Yeah, 32 seconds, which kind of sounds like a huge infomercial. You have a lot of time to convince them. Like it sounds like I'll be able to sell them whatever I want. Like, sell me this pen, all that stuff. It's 2 minutes, 32 seconds of divided attention. Like they're doing something else. You can bet your life on that. That's kind of a big problem. So let me just, and yes, mobile experience 100% more important than desktop. I don't know why that's not something that everyone is fully aware of, but we're still talking about mobile matters, mobile first, responsive. No, it should be only mobile, and then let's make it work on desktop.
90% of mockups that are presented to clients are still desktop mockups. So,
because they're made on a desktop device, and the aspect ratio is like that. I've been frustrated about this. I'm not anymore. I don't care. Like if you want to make it wrong, like if you want to make it look bad and work bad on mobile, that's kind of your problem. Why are there so many distractions in every single product page out there? Like leaving Amazon aside, like even the good ones, even Apple. I mean, okay, Apple is really kind of toned down, but even they have things that can distract you.
I think this is something that I want to comment on, because I think a lot of times, I think we need to understand where these attention taxes were born. Because I would make the argument that when you launch a new product, actually a product page is pretty simple and to the point. It's really over time that there are these changes start happening. I'll give you a classic example. When you are launching a new product, you are essentially in survival mode, and you are typically launching in a scenario of, let's say I launch an air purifier. I'm aware of the fact that there are many alternatives that are out there. So I have to pick a singular thing that I'm going to triple down on. Maybe that thing is the form factor. Like my air purifier is really small compared to competitors, and I'm just going to triple down on that point over and over again. There's nothing else I can talk about because there's nothing else that is actually unique about my product. I don't actually have a better filter mechanism. I don't have a better motor. I don't have better quiet noise. I'm just same on every aspect except the fact that I'm a small form factor. And so for in New York City apartment living, it's actually a really nice small size device, and that's what I'll do. My Facebook targeting is for New York audiences. My messaging, my video content is showing that lifestyle. Then what happens is over time, you start reading the reviews and you start realizing that, wait a minute, there are these, for some reason I don't understand, there is this farmers in Nebraska are buying my device. And you investigate this and you realize that in their tractors, they're actually placing the device because they spend so much time in the tractor. I'm just making this up. Spend so much time in the tractor that they actually need something small for that. You're like, oh my God. Okay, great. So now we're going to also talk to farmers because we don't know our audiences. Then you start realizing that you're getting a lot of B2B sales from hospitals that are buying your thing because they really need something that's small for whatever reason, right? And so my point is that on day one, you had this one use case, it was very binary. If you are not living in a small apartment in New York, or if space is not a constraint, then this product is meaningless to you and you would bounce out of the website. Well, now I've changed my ads, I've changed my product page, and I've said, here are the 3 use cases, and they all seem equally important. So think about the attention tags that's suddenly now 3x'd in size, because now we're talking about 3 different things. So I think it's important to understand that we're not looking at attention tags as something that is there by default. It is there by default, but over time, it keeps on compounding itself because the marketing team didn't have the courage to go to the CEO and say, well, maybe our original use case was the wrong use case. Well, that was his idea. So how are you going to attack that idea? So let that one be. The problem is that even though the tractor sales in the tractor use case in Nebraska is only 10% of sales, the CEO comes back and says, well, it's 10% zero. Well, no, it's not zero. Well, then keep it. And I think that's so I'd love to get Lorenzo's take on it, but this is kind of how I look at how it evolves in the first place.
Yeah, so I would explain like in 2 different ways. One would be somehow I haven't given myself an answer on why, but somehow unconsciously adding things equals more likely to sell. Somehow, so there's almost like this fear of missing out, where you're getting a feedback. Oh, a lot of people said that the dog food that we sell, they really like the fact that the packaging looks amazing. Oh, we need to add it. Yeah,
that is always one person. When they say a lot of people told me, that is always my neighbor or my nephew or something like that. Let's just be honest there. But sorry, go ahead.
So, we need to add another image of how the packaging looks like, right? Then, other people said that they really appreciated the fact that the ingredients are sourced in the US. Oh, we need to add the flag of the US because we need to. So there's, somehow, again, I can't explain why, and I haven't thought about it enough. There's almost like accumulation of things, almost to some people equals selling more. And this kind of reminds me of, again, going back to the offline example, it reminds me of some situations when I go to either conferences or trade shows. I've been to some trade shows where people can't stop talking. They just can't stop. No, but there's also this benefit. What about this other benefit? So to me, there's also somehow selling equals telling you more things, and that's why, the product page or a landing page becomes Frankenstein.
That's a good point. And to the audience, they also have a video product page versus landing page, because they did a video on everything and anything under the sun, which is a great video that you should also have a look at. It will be in the description of the episode. Now, you both work for clients. You're approached by a client, you see the page is full of distractions. Where do you get started?
Rishi?
So for me, the way I do it is again, there's a terminology we use called center of gravity. So when I'm studying a page, I'm basically asking myself, what is the center of gravity of this product? And center of gravity is a combination of things. It's not necessarily about something that's beneficial for the buyer. It could be beneficial for the seller. For example, if I'm working with a supplement brand, they may tell me that strategically getting more subscriptions for this product is the most important to them. Now, it may not be important for the buyer. So I now need to amplify this feature. I need to kind of talk about it in multiple ways. And the thing is that this is where attention tags comes in, is that if I assume that there is no attention tags, then it's very easy to actually talk about it in other ways. But when you realize that there is attention tags, and every time I talk about the same feature, so what I'm trying to get at is that the standard way to talk about subscriptions is to, in the subscription area, to say, subscribe and save money. That's one way of doing it. Well, if I want to amplify this, I would add a link there that says why subscription is a no-brainer, right? And when you click on it, we show a pop-up and that explains why subscription makes sense. Well, suddenly that is new attention tags. But if I assume that the attention tags value of the page was 0, I would easily just add it without any compromise. But now that I know it's an attention tags, I'm going to de-emphasize something else. And so I'm going to kind of like maybe say, hey, you know what? Maybe we'll make our copy description. Maybe this video we'll remove this, and so that we're not adding more attention there. The other thing is that I might mention this point about subscriptions more on the product, more multiple times on the product page. So my point is that how do I get, I think your question is like, how do you know where to kind of get started? I want to identify the center of gravity. So if the center of gravity is, getting more subscriptions, then you want to make sure most of the attention is going towards that and not being diluted by other things. But I'll let Lorenzo also give his perspective.
Yeah, so going back to this, keep on adding and, getting feedback from customers, and they tell you X, Y, and Z, you keep on adding it. One way to figure out if, adding all these things is actually working out or not is actually what I call the art of removing, right? Like the best way to figure out if something on the page is distracting the user or is helping the user is to actually start removing it and see how things change by removing that piece. So to give you an example of that, let's say that, again, let's go back to the example of the dog food. Let's say that you're saying you have like a made in the US badge or whatever. You want to understand if this is a distraction or this is actually helping the user, right? By removing that and see how things like conversion rate or sales or AOV change is a great way to figure out if that thing should be on the page. Obviously, it would depend where, but if that made in the US is helping the user convert or persuade the user more or not. And I realized that, not everybody can do this, right? It's not that everybody can remove things from product pages to figure out. But this is something that, whenever there is some sort of like politics around, let's add this and let's add that, a simple task by removing something, right, to understand how that could be impactful for the user is a good way to do that.
And I want to just give a practical example here as well to kind of play off this idea that if someone is watching this or listening to this and says, okay, I understand the concept of retention tags, but I don't know how to go about doing it for my website, right? I would have a very simple recommendation. Take a screenshot, take a printout of a page, of that principal page, right? And circle every single element that's on that page, every single element, and then give it a number, right? And now tell yourself, I need to eliminate 30% of these numbers. Let's say you have like 40 numbers, right? I have to eliminate 12 of these numbers. Which 12 would I pick? And just force yourself to make that, cross out those 12 numbers. And I think what you'll realize is that it'll really force you to prioritize. You realize, oh, there's a lot of stuff here that on, reviews, they're important. Videos are important. Having more product images are important. If you frame the question as what is important or what adds value, you will spend the rest of your life kind of thinking, going down that path. If you frame the question as I have to eliminate 30% of what's on this page, it's going to force you to make some other calls. And I think what you'll realize is that those calls they're making, it's kind of like, I remember one of the things that I read about the founders of Basecamp. They mentioned something very interesting. They said that the first version of the book Rework that they wrote, which is like a really popular book, they said that when it went to the editor told them to edit down the book. And they really didn't like their idea originally. But they said now that we've edited, they've literally reduced it by like 50% in size. And they said, now that we've published it and we've kind of really had a chance to think about it, it's actually a better book. Because by editing it down, they were forced to have make clearer points, to focus on fewer things more versus focusing on multiple things. And, it just led to a more impactful book. And I think the same analogy applies for what you're doing with your pages, right?
It really does. And one analogy I use in this podcast multiple times, especially in the early days, is if you're going on a hike and you have rough weather environment, like it's a difficult hike, you really choose what you put in that backpack because it's a matter of life and death. Like if you're going for a walk by the beach, you can carry whatever you want. If it's 5 minutes, 30 minutes, you don't care. But if this is a page that's really important for your business, that really your business depends on. Let's put it that way. It's just like that hike when, taking something that's 2 kilos that you don't need could be a matter of life and death. And I don't know why it's not like that when people make these pages, and especially, you guys are talking about the UX and CRO. I see the pages from a performance standpoint. I do a lot more performance optimization. I think it's even worse because it's under the rug. Every single marketing script out there is under the rug. When you see Hotjar and Google Optimize on a page that's not being tested on and that no one is monitoring, like that's 2 to 3 pages of slowness added to every single page load. Why it's like that, I don't know, but it just is. Lorenzo, you also said on one of the videos, fake quoted, "Hey, I have this asset, we built it, we need to put it on the page," which is like the dumbest way to look at it. It's sunk cost, like whatever you want to call it. But still, people think everything is.
Yeah, and oftentimes, actually, this is a conversation that Rishi and I had recently. What I find interesting is that oftentimes what clients consider to be marketing material, it's not marketing material. So what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. If you think about the average e-commerce, right? I'll talk about one topic that is extremely important on a landing page or on a product page, which is product images, right? The way brands come up with product images is based on the creative brain of a photographer, okay? Or somebody that doesn't know anything about the customer, right? To me, that's not the smart decision. Why are you outsourcing the art of taking photos, which again, if you look at a product page, the image gallery is the section with the highest number of engagement and click, to somebody that doesn't know anything about your customers, right? So my point being that, it kind of goes back to what you were saying. Oh, we already have the creative, right? Let's add the creative into the page. But even that is wrong because, who made the creative? Who came up with this creative? The photographer, just because he's great at clicking a button on the camera? No, it should be a copywriter or user research or a CR person that directs the photographer and tells the photographer what kind of photos they need to take.
That's a very good point. Rishi, do you have something to add?
No, I think this is it. Yeah, I agree with what Lorenzo was saying.
That was a very good point. And on that note, I think we should end because we're trying to keep this to under 30 minutes because it's short and sweet.
Nice.
I want to thank you guys. This was a very I had a lot of fun doing this episode. And to everyone listening, drop your phone, just give something your full attention, and consider rating, reviewing, and sharing the podcast episode. And we'll talk to you next week.